Bedford Basin, a large enclosed bay at the northwestern end of Halifax Harbour, is the site of several chilling maritime legends. The most persistent tales involve a phantom rowboat and ghostly pirates on its central island. The Phantom Rowboat. The most famous ghost story associated with the Bedford Basin is that of the Phantom Dory. The legend, sometime in the 19th century, a dory filled with local fishermen became lost in a thick, heavy fog. Despite their efforts to reach the shore, the boat capsized, and all men on board drowned. The haunting, on foggy nights, those standing along the shoreline, particularly near Dewolf Park in Bedford, have reported hearing the rhythmic sound of oars dipping into the water. The experience, witnesses describe the sound as getting closer and closer to the shore, but no boat ever materializes out of the mist. The Pirates of Stevens Island. Located in the center of the basin, Stevens Island, also known as Navy Island, is steeped in pirate lore and paranormal sightings. The Pirate Watch, an 1825 report from a midshipman, claims he saw ghostly pirates changing the treasure guard under a moonlit haze. Ancient burial grounds. The island is home to a Mechanic burial ground and was used as a 19th century quarantine hospital, adding to its reputation for being haunted by restless spirits. Admiral Duke d'Anville's ghost. A tragic historical event from 1746 also haunts the basin's waters. The disaster. French Admiral Duke d'Anville led a massive invasion fleet that was decimated by disease and storms before reaching Halifax. Hundreds of his men died in the basin. The sightings. The Admiral's ghost has been reported strutting along the shores and walking into the water toward his lost fleet, fully clad in his 18th century French uniform. Modern cryptids. The Sea Dragon. In addition to ghosts, the basin has a history of cryptid sightings. On September 12, 1934, multiple witnesses reported a 70-foot sea creature slicing through the water near the Fairview shore. Interestingly, modern sonar data from 2022 reportedly registered a large, moving echo in the area that remains unexplained. The Charlotte County Courthouse in St. Andrews, New Brunswick, Canada, is widely rumored to be haunted by the spirits of convicts who were executed at the adjacent county jail. The legend of the executed convicts. The primary ghost stories relate to the close proximity of the courthouse. Built in the 1840s, and the old county jail, which was in use until the 1870s. The hostile man with the rope. The most prominent apparition is a tall, hostile male spirit seen carrying a piece of rope, seemingly searching for something or someone. Witnesses and paranormal investigators have reported feeling watched or experiencing cold spots in his presence. Haunted jail, cell. Across the street is the Charlotte County Jail Provincial Historic Site, which is intrinsically linked to the courthouse's ghost stories. The jail is believed to be haunted by the last man executed there, Tom Roland Hutchings, a 21-year-old convicted of murder in the 1940s. His execution in 1947 was reportedly botched, taking 18 minutes for him to die, which some believe trapped his soul at the site. Other activity. Reports of paranormal activity extend to the jail's dark cells, where visitors have felt an intense presence or the feeling of being touched. In the courthouse itself, poltergeist activity like objects moving on their own has also been reported. For those interested in hearing more about these tales, The Charlotte County Archives offers historical walking and evening ghost tours of the courthouse and the old jail cells during the summer months. Citadel Hill in Halifax is rife with ghost stories, featuring apparitions like the Grey Lady on the veranda, vanishing soldiers in the garrison cells, and a ghostly man in a red cloak, alongside unexplained bangs, cold spots, and moving furniture, with many tales rooted in its history as a 19th-century British fort and World War I detention center, often explored during popular candlelight ghost tours. The Grey Lady, a well-known spirit, often seen as a young woman in white or gray, wandering the barracks and verandas, appearing since the early 1900s. Vanishing soldier, visitors and staff report seeing soldiers in uniform walk into rooms, especially in the garrison cells, old prison rooms, only to disappear. The Red Cloak, a mysterious figure in a red cloak is sometimes seen, adding to the spectral sightings. The Little Girl, some ghost tour participants report feeling a little girl hold their hands or follow their groups. Ensign Wynyard's brother, a story tells of a gaunt man in hunting clothes appearing to an officer, later revealed to be the spirit of the officer's brother who died in a hunting accident on the same day. Disembodied voices and sounds, unexplained knocks, bangs, and voices echo through the fort. Physical sensations, cold spots, sudden gusts of wind in closed-off areas, and the feeling of being watched are common. Objects moving, furniture has been reported to move, and doors have been seen to bang on their own. Why so haunted? The Citadel's long history as a military fortification, a prison, and a detention camp, WWI, provides a rich backdrop for these tales, with staff and visitors experiencing phenomena during candlelight tours that explore its dark corners in history. The fireship of Beta Chalas, also known as the Chalas Phantom, is a legendary ghost ship frequently reported in the waters between New Brunswick and Quebec. Descriptions usually involve a multi-masted vessel, such as a three-mast galley or schooner, completely engulfed in red or orange flames. Key folklore and origins. There is no single true origin, but several popular versions exist. Portuguese explorer Gaspar Cortereal, the most famous version claims explorer Gaspar Cortereal kidnapped 57 indigenous people, Mi'kmaq or Beothuk, for the slave trade in 1501. Local warriors reportedly set his ship ablaze in retaliation, and it is said to haunt the bay as a burning wreck. Pirate curse. Another tale tells of a pirate crew that murdered a woman who, with her dying breath, cursed them to burn on the bay forever. The Lady Colborne. Some attribute sightings to the wreck of the Lady Colborne, which sank in 1838 carrying gold and spices. Literary invention. Historian William F. Ganong concluded that the Cortereal version was largely popularized, and possibly invented, by author Eliza Chase in her one-th book, Quest of the Quaint. Scientific investigations. In 1905, Harvard professor William Francis Ganong investigated the sightings. Although initially skeptical, he interviewed numerous credible witnesses who described a physical, glowing light. St. Elmo's fire. Ganong and colleague Dr. J. Orne Green proposed the phenomenon was an electrical discharge known as St. Elmo's fire, which often precedes storms. Alternative theories. Other scientific explanations include phosphorescent marine life, ignis fatuus, marsh gas, or mirages refracting distant lights across the water. Notable sightings. Frequency. Reports often occur on hot summer nights or just before a significant storm. Descriptions. Witnesses have described seeing sailors scurrying on deck and jumping into the water to escape flames. 1878 incident. On Heron Island, Mrs. Pettigrew reported a legless, ghostly sailor appearing on her veranda, asking for help with his burns. Modern reports. Sightings continue into the 21st century, with reports in 2023 even prompting inquiries to the Coast Guard. The Fortress of Louisbourg, a reconstructed 18th century French fortress in Nova Scotia, is steeped in ghost stories, with visitors and staff reporting unexplained footsteps, shadowy figures, and unseen forces, particularly in older buildings like the engineer's residence, leading to claims that spirits of soldiers, colonists, and even a banished man linger within its walls, with paranormal investigations often capturing unusual sounds or camera malfunctions. Unseen hands and pushes. Visitors have reported being pushed by unseen forces, even in concealed tunnels beneath the walls, notes a YouTube video from the show Ghost Cases. Footsteps and figures. Eerie footsteps are heard in upper stories, particularly in Judge Lartigue's home and the engineer's residence, where figures are sometimes seen, according to posts from the official Fortress of Louisbourg National Historic Site on Facebook. Chapel activity. A psychic detected negative energy in the chapel attic, where an investigator's camera mysteriously died, notes a YouTube video from the show Ghost Cases. Haunted houses. Staff report figures on stairwells and instances where unseen forces prevented people from falling. The Banished Man. One legend involves a soldier banished for defacing religious property, with his unhappy spirit rumored to still roam. Why the hauntings? Rich history. The site was a crucial French military and fishing port, home to soldiers, merchants, and families, creating a deep history and many potential spirits. Authentic reconstruction. The historical accuracy of the site, with its 18th century atmosphere, makes it fertile ground for stories connecting to its past inhabitants. The Fortress of Louisbourg embraces its haunted reputation, with even the official site acknowledging that, some say the ghosts of Louisbourg never left, inviting visitors to listen to the land's stories. The Floating Ball of Beeswax. One of the most famous unexplained events involves a worker in the 1970s cleaning soot from a military chapel attic. He reportedly saw a ball of beeswax float 40 feet across a room and land on another table, leaving a clean outline in the soot where it had originally sat. The Woman of the Duhaget House. Staff and visitors have long reported a presence in the Duhaget House. A frequent sighting is Madame Duhaget, who is said to be seen cradling a baby. Records indicate she suffered several stillbirths while living there. The Foul-Mouthed Woman. Staff have reported seeing a woman in 18th century clothing who yells profanities in French at tour groups. When approached, she reportedly vanishes. The Governor's Audience. Paranormal investigators have recorded significant temperature drops and EMF, electromagnetic field, spikes near the fireplace in the Governor's Audience Chamber, a room where Governor Duquesnel once suffered through illness and eventually died. The Restless Executioner. Guided tours often feature the ghost of an executioner who describes the 1,000 New Englanders buried in mass graves at Rockefort Point who died of exposure and disease during the winter of 1745. Pitter-patter of footsteps. Eerie footsteps are frequently reported on the upper floors of Judge Lartigue's home and the engineer's residence. Ghostly soldiers. Sightings of reenactors in uniforms no longer used by current staff such as a Swiss Army officer have been reported by visitors. Haunted doll. A doll in the Degand house is rumored to bring bad luck if it is touched and not properly reswaddled afterward. The primary legend of Nahanni National Park Reserve is the Valley of the Headless Men story, which involves the mysterious disappearances and decapitations of several gold prospectors in the early 20th century. The area is also steeped in older Dean legends of an evil spirit in a vanished tribe. The legend of the Headless Men. The legend began in 1908 with the gruesome discovery of the remains of two Métis brothers, Willie and Frank McLeod, in a valley they had traveled to in search of gold. A search party led by their brother Charlie found their skeletons by the remains of their camp, but both were missing their heads. One body was reaching for a rifle, suggesting they were attacked in their sleep. Their companion, a man named Weir, was never found. In the following years, other prospectors met similar fates. In 1917, a Swiss prospector named Martin Jorgensen was found headless near his burned-down cabin. He had previously written to friends saying he'd struck it rich, but his gold was missing. In 1927, another prospector/outlaw known as Yukon Fisher was found decapitated in the same general area as the McLeod brothers. His camp also burned. He was known to have been spending gold nuggets freely before his death. In 1945, a miner from Ontario was found dead in his sleeping bag, his head severed and never recovered. These unexplained deaths and disappearances in the remote wilderness, combined with local oral histories, led to the region being nicknamed the Valley of the Headless Men. Features in the park, such as Dead Men Valley and the Headless Range, were officially named in reference to these events. Other mysteries and legends. Beyond the Headless Men, the Nahanni Valley is home to other unsettling legends. The Naha tribe, according to the oral history of the local Dean people, the valley was once home to a fierce, mountain-dwelling tribe called the Naha who often raided Dean settlements before mysteriously vanishing. Some speculate they are the ancestors of the modern Navajo people, due to linguistic similarities. Evil spirits and creatures. The Dean people long avoided parts of the valley, believing it was cursed or haunted by an evil spirit whose wailings could be heard in the canyons. There are also tales of hairy, cave-dwelling giants, an enormous wolf-like creature called the Wahila, and sightings of a subhuman creature named the Nukluk. Strange phenomena. Visitors and pilots have reported odd occurrences over the years, including mysterious lights at night and helicopter equipment failures. While many of the deaths can be attributed to the extremely harsh and remote wilderness conditions, bears, or rivalries during the gold rush, the specific pattern of decapitations and burned cabins adds a chilling layer of mystery that continues to draw interest from adventurers and storytellers. Seal Island, located off the southwestern coast of Nova Scotia, Canada, is steeped in maritime tragedy and legendary hauntings. Known as the Graveyard of the Atlantic, the island is home to one of Canada's most chilling ghost stories. The ghost of Annie Lindsay. The most famous legend centers on Annie Lindsay, a stewardess aboard the steamship SS Ottawa, which was shipwrecked off Seal Island in 1891. The tragedy: during a violent storm, the SS Ottawa struck the treacherous Blonde Rock. Annie was placed in a lifeboat that tragically overturned in the heavy seas. While several crew members managed to survive by clinging to the keel, Annie was believed to have drowned. The burial alive. Her body was recovered and buried in the East End churchyard on the island. However, local legend claims that when her coffin was disinterred years later for relocation, there was evidence such as scratch marks on the lid suggesting she had been buried alive while in a state of shock or a deep coma. Sightings. Since then, visitors and seasonal residents have reported seeing a spectral woman wandering the churchyard and the abandoned villages of the island. Her spirit is said to haunt the island, perhaps eternally reliving the day of the shipwreck. The Ghost Villages. Seal Island was once a year-round community established to assist shipwrecked mariners. Settlement. In 1823, families like the Hickens and Crowells settled there to provide life-saving services. Abandonment. As the lobster cannery closed in the 1950s and modern navigation reduced shipwrecks, the permanent population dwindled. Today, the island features ghost villages, East Village and West Village, where many buildings stand empty for most of the year, adding to the island's eerie atmosphere. Eerie sounds. The island is still home to thousands of seals. At night, their grunts, wails, and cries can sound remarkably like human voices or ghostly screams, often fueling supernatural beliefs among those visiting the remote location. The Dungarvan Hooper is a famous New Brunswick, Canada, ghost story and legend about a murdered logger, often an Irish cook named Ryan, whose spirit haunts the Dungarvan River area, emitting terrifying whooping screams. While the popular campfire tale involves a vengeful ghost seeking justice for his murder and stolen money, the legend stems from real, mysterious screaming phenomena in the 1800s, potentially linked to a hermit or animal, later sensationalized by journalists and promoters, with a song and local lore, solidifying its place in maritime culture. The Dungarvan Hooper, often misspelled as Whopper, is a legendary ghost story from central New Brunswick, Canada. It centers on the alleged murder of a young Irish cook near the Dungarvan River in the late 19th century and the blood-curdling screams that followed. The legend of the murdered cook. The victim, a young Irishman, often named Ryan, who worked as a cook in a lumber camp. The crime: Ryan reportedly carried a money belt containing his life savings. While the lumberjacks were out working, the camp boss murdered Ryan to steal the money. The haunting: after Ryan was buried in a shallow forest grave, the camp was plagued by terrifying, high-pitched whooping screams. The sounds were so intense that the crew fled the camp the next morning. The exorcism: the screams supposedly continued for years until a Catholic priest, Father Edward Murdoch, performed an exorcism at the gravesite at Hooper Spring. Historical explanations and variations. Actual screams: mysterious screams began in the Miramichi area after the 1,000 people for years. The Lost Man Theory. In 1895, reporters Frank Ristine and Frederick Ireland encountered a haggard old man with an axe living in an abandoned cabin near the river. They believed his incoherent wailing and presence might have sparked or sustained the legend. The passenger train. The name was later given to a Canadian National Railway passenger train that ran between Newcastle and Fredericton. Its steam whistle supposedly echoed the whooping sound of the ghost. Literary influence. The story was popularized by a 1912 poem and song written by Michael Whelan, known as the Poet of the Miramichi. The King's Playhouse in Georgetown, Prince Edward Island, is widely considered one of the most haunted locations in Canada. Its most famous resident is a spirit known as Captain George, a friendly but mischievous ghost who has been reported by staff and visitors for decades. The legend of Captain George. Identity. While his exact identity remains a mystery, local tradition names him Captain George. A town council even officially voted to name him this because of his frequent appearances. The reserved seat. The Playhouse reserves a specific front row seat for Captain George during every performance to keep him content. It is said that if a patron accidentally sits in his chair, technical malfunctions like flickering lights or machinery failures immediately occur. Activity. Witnesses have reported a variety of paranormal experiences, including shadowy figures, dark man-shaped shadows appearing in wedding photos and videos. Physical interaction. Patrons feeling a phantom hand grab or touch them during shows. Audible signs. Unexplained footsteps in the park area and voices heard in the upstairs hallways. Poltergeist activity. Large light fixtures swinging on their own and doors mysteriously opening or rattling. The history and other spirits. The 1983 fire. The original theater, built in 1897, was destroyed by fire in 1983. It was rebuilt as a replica the following year, and many believe the spirits remained with the land or the new structure. Possible second spirit. Some investigators have suggested a second spirit named John or Jonathan, possibly Jean-Pierre Roma, a historical figure from the area, may also inhabit the space. Burial grounds. Some legends suggest the original building was constructed near or over an old gravesite of sailors, which might explain the captain persona. Wabana, located on Bell Island, Newfoundland, and Labrador, is renowned as one of the most haunted locations in North America. Its ghost stories are deeply rooted in its history as a major iron ore mining hub and its isolation in Conception Bay. The legend of the Bell Island Hag, the Swamp Hag. The most famous ghost story in Wabana is that of the Bell Island Hag, also known as the Swamp Hag or the Ghost of Dobbin's Garden. The legend, according to local folklore, a woman was murdered or died tragically in a marshy area on the outskirts of Wabana known as Dobbin's Garden. The apparition. Witnesses describe seeing a beautiful woman dressed in white walking out of the marsh. As she approaches, her appearance turns gray, and she drops to all fours, crawling like a dog. Her face is described as wormed out with dark pits for eyes. The encounter. She is said to emit a foul, sulfuric smell that can knock a person unconscious. She supposedly targets men, telling them to taste what I tasted and smell what I smelled before they pass out. Cultural impact. This legend was immortalized by Canada Post in a 2016 Halloween-themed Haunted Canada stamp. The Haunted Wabana Iron Ore Mines. The mines, which operated from 1895 to 1966, saw over 106 fatalities and numerous tragic accidents. Ghostly miners, visitors and workers have reported hearing the sounds of ghostly miners working, banging, clanging, and the sound of voices echoing through the tunnels. Shadow figures, shadowy figures and mysterious lights, often called will-o'-the-wisps, are frequently reported deep within the number 2 mines. Billy Swain. One specific spirit often mentioned is Billy Swain, an English sailor who died during a 1942 German U-boat torpedo attack on ore ships in the Tickle. Other notable Wabana lore. The Woman in White, a different variation of the Woman in White, was used to scare children. It was later revealed in some accounts to be a local man who would dress in a sheet to peep into windows. The Bell Island Boom. While not strictly a ghost story, the 1978 Bell Island Boom, a massive, unexplained explosion that damaged homes and created square craters, remains a core part of the island's supernatural reputation.